Sam Williams. I work as an engineer in general services, and I served in the Army Reserves from 1972 through 1976 and the active Navy from 1980 to 1984.
I'm Tom Webb. I'm the Environmental Initiatives Program Manager Senior for the Division of Environmental Policy for the City of Lexington. I've been with the city since 1993, July of 93, and I served in the U.S. Army.
I'm Captain Sean Campbell with the Division of Community Corrections. I served in the United States Army from 1998 to 2003.
In 1972, you recall, that was still the Vietnam conflict was going on, and the draft was part of the concern for us young men, and my draft number was 8, so I decided that rather than to get drafted, I was in college at the time in UK College of Engineering, and I decided to join the Army Reserves. Didn't know what I was getting into. Went to basic training at Fort Jackson, AIT infantry at Fort Jackson, and went on to the 3rd Army Drill Sergeant School at Fort Jackson. So after 6 months in uniform, I was a drill sergeant, and came back, and we did that through the summers for 6 years.
I went in and went into my basic training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina in June of '87. I went from basic training into Warrant Officer Entry course at Fort Rucker, Alabama, and then into flight school in Fort Rucker, Alabama. So that was about a year's worth of training straight through, and then out into the reserves. I spent most of my time pretty much in aviation capacity as a pilot in the Army. Once I got out of the flight school, I was commissioned a warrant officer, W1 rank in the aviation branch. And I spent the rest of my time within the reserves as a pilot. We started out as a medevac pilot with the 412th Medevac based at Bowman Field in Louisville. Did that for about a year, and then they transitioned us to Cobra helicopters.
I was interested in law enforcement, and it was part of my plan to transition into it. And I became military police corrections specialist in I-5C. So I actually worked at the regional correctional facility at Fort Knox, Kentucky, which was a facility that housed military inmates with up to 5 years to serve. And then I transitioned over to the United States Disciplinary Barracks, which is the military's only maximum security prison, housing everything over 5 years all the way up to death row for the military. We also housed any commissioned officers that were convicted of crimes regardless of the length of their sentence.
Well, of course, after the 6 years obligation with the Army Reserves, I went in the active Navy and was got a direct commission as a Lieutenant JG, and was in the Civil Engineer Corps, which is the officer corps for the Seabees, and also do the construction management for the Navy, the shore facilities, and also act as the officers in the Public Works Department. My first duty station was at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, and this was during the buildup of the Navy during the end of the Cold War under President Reagan, and his goal was to have 600 ships in service at that time. And at the shipyard in Philadelphia, we were rebuilding the aircraft carrier Saratoga, which went on to serve in the Gulf War. And we also, Philadelphia had an inactive ships division, which basically had two old World War II vintage battleships that were in mothballs there. And when I was there, we brought the USS Iowa out of mothballs, put her in the dry dock, and sandblasted the hull and painted the exterior, and then she was towed to Pascagoula, private shipyard in Pascagoula, and brought back into service. And of course, she saw service during the Gulf conflicts.
It's kind of like driving a sports car in the air, so to speak. It's just the fuselage is very tight. It comes It's about as wide as your shoulders, not much wider than that. And particularly if you sit up front in a gunner position, it's like sitting in I don't know, a picture window at 150 miles an hour, if you can imagine that. But we did a lot of training, a lot of nap of the earth flying, low-level flying. Did a lot of tactics training, that kind of thing. So it was a once-in-a-lifetime experience to be able to fly that particular helicopter. It was just, it was really enjoyable. Now we were given Apaches shortly. Probably 2 or 3 years after we got the Cobras, and we transitioned to Apaches after that. So I had the pleasure of flying Hueys and Apaches and Cobras, all three. So it was an enjoyable time for me.
Well, the facilities, Fort Knox held up to around 100. Fort Leavenworth actually held up to 2,000 while I was there. I would personally supervise up to 100 inmates at a time. It was very different from civilian prisons. You had more discipline with the incarcerated individuals, more respect. Unlike working like in a county jail, you didn't see people that when they were intoxicated for the most part. But at the same time, these people were trained on how to kill people. And we had some scary individuals to deal with. I remember we had one at Fort Leavenworth who was actually a Navy SEAL who was in prison because someone decided to assault him and his girlfriend outside of a club. And the three of them that jumped him, he actually killed 2 of the 3 with his bare hands. And that was the type of people we dealt with. I mean, he was kind of an extreme example, but we had some highly trained people in there.
But again, going back to my experiences in the Navy, of course, my experience, what I've done for the city is very similar. You know, I was hired by the city to manage construction within the engineering department, which I did. And then, of course, I was director at Streets and Roads, which is basically the public works function, which, you know, I drew from my military experience to do that. And now I'm working in the general services, working on building projects, looking at new facilities the city's doing. So my military career pretty much parallels my civilian career as an engineer.
Oh yeah, I think when you go through that level of training and that much training, no matter what your MOS is or what your job is in the military, you learn self-discipline, you learn sacrifice, you learn teamwork. Those are skill sets that transfer to any job. So I think any veteran brings a certain level of skills that they have an advantage over folks that maybe have not served. Now, there are probably exceptions, but as a rule, I think that anytime you serve, you come back with a better skill set than when you left.
Well, I work for the Division of Community Corrections in the Urban County government, so it's a very short leap from military service. I mean, we see different things in the Division of Community Corrections, a little different environment, but all in all, you know, it's the same job, and I love what I do.